So, today's video is more serious than the others because it's a response to a comment I received recently, and I might cry a little bit today, but it's okay. To be honest, this video is going to be a lot more philosophical and delving deep into less concrete things about having a disability. And before I get started, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. So this comment was obviously from someone who had a very negative self-image. It concerned me and it made me a little upset. And not because it attacked me personally, but because the person writing it sounded very upset, frustrated, and angry. It bothered me and I didn't respond for a bit because there was just a lot to unpack. This person talked about bullying experiences they'd had, how they'd use music to express themselves before they felt like they would always be only known as a disabled musician instead of just a beautiful musician. They mentioned that joining social groups made up of other people with disabilities is basically a way for typical people to sweep the disabled community under the rug. Then they ended the comment by expressing to me how important finding a cure was to them, how they want the suffering to stop, and by saying they didn't advocate for seeing the positives in disability. See what I mean? There's lots to unpack there. When I read the comment, I just kind of sat there, startled, if I'm being honest. One part of me was glad because here was this heartfelt comment I had been waiting for, but it was so intense and had so many things to discuss that I didn't know how to respond. I even showed it to my mom and said, "Hey, read this comment. How do I respond to it?" When I first started this channel, I wanted to keep it pretty lighthearted, tips and tricks and views into how my life works. After I shared a little of my own experience with bullies, and I'll share some instances of discrimination and levels of inclusion in a video soon, I feel like this video needs to be more than just a lecture and more of a glance into the heart of what having a disability is like. So I'm dedicating this entire video to basically addressing the umbrella hanging over this comment: self-acceptance. I have a feeling one of two things is going to happen. I'm either going to gain or lose a whole bunch of subscribers this week. And whichever one happens, I'll be okay. As I said, self-acceptance, when other people don't even accept you all of the time, is really hard to think about. And obviously, I don't know everything. I'm only 17. But despite my age, I really feel like I understand things that a lot of typical kids my age don't get. And honestly, a lot of what I'm going to tell you is subjective, but I also firmly believe that all of this is very true. Right now, I'm working on editing the first draft of a memoir I've been writing. It's not very long, only about 13,000 words, but I wish I had already published it so that anyone who is struggling with these questions could read it. But since it's not published, I'll just tell you about it. We're having a whole story time this week. I've titled it The Journey So Far, and I go through my journeys to become a better friend, be more involved in my religious life, be less timid and more confident in myself. And of course, self-acceptance. None of it has been easy. In fact, learning to love yourself when some people in the world don't is the hardest thing any human person can ever do. And I'm not going to tell you that you're perfect just the way you are, because you're not. You're the way you should be. In the memoir, I go a lot into the foundations of my faith, which basically are all personal anecdotes of instances where I'm certain that what I believe is true. So I'll share two of those stories because I don't want to bore everyone to death, and one story isn't even mine. The first story is the story of a family that my family knows really well. A few years ago, their youngest child, a son, died in an accident a couple weeks before Christmas. He was 10. Our entire community knows this family, and we were all heartbroken. At Christmas, his mom opened his gift for her. He had bought it just a week or two before he died, and this story is probably the strongest affirmation I have that God exists and looks out for us. His gift to his mom was 2 magnets. One had a Bible verse, Matthew 28:20, "I am with you always." And the other said, All things happen for a reason. I don't know what that reason is, but I do know that there have been some pretty amazing things that have come out of his death. I go to a college prep Catholic school, and I know that there has been a scholarship established in his name. And so far it's really helped students with their faith and their education, and I think it'll continue to help people for generations. So if there's anything that tells me that nothing in this world is without purpose, it's that. My personal story is one I actually didn't know until several months ago. I've started calling it my origin story, and it's pretty killer. Knowing my origin story has become such a large part of how I've worked on being a better human being and accepting myself. When my mom was about 29 weeks pregnant with me, she woke up in the middle of the night and there was blood everywhere. My dad rushed her to the hospital and she was terrified. They had tried to have babies before and they had had miscarriages. The doctor there told her that she had had a placental abruption, and if they did nothing, both of us would die. If they performed a C-section, my mom would live and I would have a chance. Only a chance. So they did a C-section, and before I had even taken my first breath, I was already living off of a maybe. At that point, if I lived or died was out of anyone's hands, and I survived. That has to mean something. The reason, the cause of the life I've had to live feeling inferior to my peers is because I survived. If my mom hadn't had that C-section 10 weeks early, if she hadn't had the placental abruption, I would just be as normal as any kid. That means that I am meant to be the way I am. There is something bigger than myself that needs me to have the disability I have. Realizing this is really hard, and it doesn't just happen overnight. You have to work for it. I had a low point in my life where I was so frustrated and exhausted from having to fight for everything that I didn't want to live with it anymore. The commenter has talked about finding a cure, but at this point in my life, this was way worse than that. I didn't want to live with my body, so I didn't want to live at all. Even to this day, there are days where I get so angry because it's not fair. None of it is fair. It's the age-old question, why do bad things happen to good people? Bad things happen to good people so that they can be better people. I always think of the story of Saul in the Bible. He went from persecuting Christians to becoming a Catholic saint and apostle, one of Jesus' right-hand men, and the letters he wrote teaching others to be better are included in the Bible. If someone as bad as Saul can become as good as he was when he became Paul, think of people who are good people that experience bad things. So yeah, having a disability is really hard, especially when most of the time you're around people who can't even imagine what it's like. And sometimes I look in the mirror and I hate what I see. I hate feeling like I'm lesser than others, feeling less attractive, feeling like I always have to compensate in school because no one will take me seriously otherwise. There are people who will never have to go through what I have. And even when there are people who do go through the same thing, people never react the same way. That's why I find psychology and studying personality so interesting. Two people can go through two exact situations, but they'll react differently, and their reaction can start a chain reaction of how they develop and grow and learn in the future. That's why it's hard, because life isn't meant to be stagnant. It's not meant to be fixed. Life and people are meant to change and grow, learn, then unlearn, experience joy, then experience the lowest of lows. People with disabilities are just faced with that reality a whole lot sooner. Most typical people aren't born in a fight for their lives. So to that commenter, and you know who you are, I want to tell you something. I have no idea where you're from, what gender you are, your name, your age, what your situation is, but I know one thing that I think is more important than any other part of you. If you could send me a comment and watch my video, I know you're alive. Which means you've made the choice that you won't give up. Whether it was conscious or not, you decided that you are strong enough to survive in a world where you're always swimming upstream. So that tells me you're probably stronger than you think. And you may not listen to me, or maybe you didn't even watch the video, but I can only hope that it reaches at least one person who's suffering. And tons of people suffer. People with disabilities just can't hide their suffering. There is so much more I could say in response to this comment, but I just want to end with one question. If a good person does one small bad thing, does that automatically make them a bad person? Of course not. Then how can some of us believe that our disability is all we are? People are complex. Life is complex. One of my strongest beliefs is that everything is the way it is for a reason. And it's hard. Sometimes I can't see what that reason is. But other times I experience beautiful things and I think this wouldn't be possible if I weren't the way I am. Your disability isn't who you are. It's your origin story. That's it for this week. I hope that I reached someone out there, and if you have any of these kinds of self-loathing thoughts and need someone to help you, I am here. There are going to be some people who may be offended by what I said or really disagree with me, and I'm okay with that. Just spread the love, like, share, comment, and subscribe. I love you guys. You're all beautiful. Bye.